Okay, welcome to Kaushik Kitab, August 4, 2023. We are reading Sarga 6, Dawn, and Rakesh is speaking. Go for it.
Yeah. So today is a great day because I started the day with a wonderful article that I would recommend to all of you. Our guru here, Subhash ji, has actually written an article on the power of stories. And he has, brought examples from various cultures. And I think it's a bellwether day when very serious scholars uh, who should deserve Nobel Prizes begin to now write about the importance of storytelling for culture. And then I was very happy also to see just 10 minutes ago that a Mr. Shubhan Raina has put out an anthology of classical stories of Kashmir. Most of the writers are Kashmiri Muslims, but that's all right. And, he's the editor, and that's good. That now the Kashmiri storytelling is beginning to now get, different people will see it in different ways. It's beginning to get more traction. So maybe the land of stories, Kashmir, will once again bloom. So thank you, Subhaji, and I hope you write some more articles on the genre of storytelling. So I want to start with the first question because that's a great segue into this chapter. And then I will open the floor and we'll go around the group and we'll ask each one what struck you about Sarga 6. So the question I had left you guys was, how did Dawn's mother know about about Sarvanash lying in store? How did she know that? And some of you came up with some answers, right? Anybody want to just take a minute and offer a couple of speculations how she knew?
Our A student is not here today.
All right.
But yeah, we can go around.
How did she know that Sarvanash was awaiting?
Because she knew the opponents, how like she was aware, she had the knowledge of the opponents, that how Arman and her husband were. And I mean, it's easy to predict if you have the knowledge of the opposition.
Easy to predict, yeah. Okay, so actually the dirty answer to that question is that she didn't know.
Oh.
She didn't know. So why did she say that? Why she said that was that she, as a mother, as every Kashmiri mother knows, death fears most the fear of death. And she wanted to empower her daughter with that knowledge. Death fears most the fear of death. And why is that? Take the example. I mean, I've sort of given it to you in a very provocative way, but take the simple example. If you are afraid that you will die of corona death, what will that fear of death make you do? It'll make you go and take precautions. It'll make you go and take vaccines. All of the things that come out of the fear of death, what do? They slay death, right? Now, did you understand? Okay. So, the whole idea is that the fear of death carries in it fearlessness also, because you respond.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so basic to Kashmiri culture, so basic to Kashmiri culture, that one of our most favorite songs is the one by our Gop Vyap Charachan. When he goes into the cave singing, I have no fear of death. Right? That whole song, Vyap Charachan. Him and his 1,200 followers going to cave. I have no fear of death. I have no fear of death. So the mother is really trying to create that fear of death in the daughter. Now, how does every Kashmiri mother create the fear of death? Hata fail hagasak. Right? We are constantly doing it to our kids. Now, I'm going to digress and give a theory of this. Give a theory of this as a storyteller. The strongest cultures are cultures where there's a combination of fear of death and freedom, swatantra. Because the fear of death then makes you say, I have to find a upay to conquer this fear. And the freedom is what permits you to then seek options and solutions, right? Right? So if you look at cultures, when America was great, there was a combination of fear and freedom. Today in America, there's freedom, there's no fear. There is absolutely no fear. A teacher cannot touch the child. Not just physically, forget physically, a teacher cannot give a bad grade because that may traumatize the student. The student goes to some goddamn, soccer field, everybody has to get a trophy. Nobody can be a loser. Right? There is no fear in this country, right? The other example of it is Japan. Japan does have fear. So if you don't pass the competitive exams, kids commit suicide. In corporate Japan, if you don't go above a certain level, or if you lose your job, you just sit, you go to a train station, you sit because you don't want people to lose their job. There's tremendous fear in Japan. But what don't they have? They don't have freedom. That culture does not give you the freedom because you have to have freedom and be unconventional. The proof of freedom is unconventional thinking, right? Mm-hmm. Now, India, amazingly, is right now at that place where there is fear. Right? People are afraid, they want to get into college. 60% seats are reserved for, quota system. There's a lot of pressure to compete. There is a lot of hunger amongst the youth. But there's the freedom. There's a freedom. Jugaad is a big thing in India. Right? Finding a way to beat the system. It's not how much money you have made. It's how you have made. When your friends say, kya baat hai, then you know that it's a big effort. Right? So anyway, I've gone way beyond the storytelling. But this idea, this basic idea, that fear of death is actually a very powerful liberating force and should be invoked, is the idea behind Sarga. And hence we segue into the title of Sarga 6, Dare the Scare. Dare the Scare. And now I'm going to just say one more point, and then I'll turn the floor over. Why was this scene located in Vatalpura? Well, there are two meanings to everything, and three meanings, and four meanings, and five meanings, and six meanings, and seven meanings, right? So Vatal can, at its lowest level, you understand, at its lowest, right? And so one can associate, okay, that would be the neighborhood where there'd be drinking, gambling, women, all of what you would associate with Vegas, right? So you can mentally sort of it has it. But au contraire, there is also at least my two favorite more than Patanjali, more than all the stuff. My two favorite Kashmir shower texts are very, very, very short. I rate them even higher than the Gyandhara. I rate them even higher than any other sacred text. And one of those is alluded to in this chapter. One of those. And that is the aphorisms of Vatulanatha, who espoused the doctrine of Mahasas. Mahasas. Have you guys heard of this? Vatulanath and Mahasas? Anybody heard about it? Okay. So he's not that well known. My prediction is he will become very, very well known. And I think he's written 13 verses only in this. And Bettina Baumer, I think, actually did the translation. But now I find Chris Wallace, a good friend, is coming out with a whole book on Vatulanath thing. And what is Mahasas? Because in this chapter, the whole persona of Muladeva, he's a personification of Mahasas. And what is Sahas? What is Sahas? Sahas
Courage.
is courage, but it's more than courage. It is intense courage. It's more than intense and powerful courage. It is sudden. It is sudden. And Mahasas is even beyond that. It is an effortless, sudden, intense, powerful courage. Because Mahasas is an awakening. It is an awakening. How to invoke Mahasas? And Vatulanath, by the way, we don't know who he was. All we can say is he was a mad monk. Chris Wallace has given him a slightly more decent name. But this idea of daring the scare, of confronting the fear of death through Mahasas, this is the central transition learning niti lesson from Sarga 5 to Sarga 6. And Muladeva, who is the personification, is a fascinating character, and we'll all talk about him. But he's fascinating because not only is he India's most famous robber, there are so many Muladeva stories, not just limited to Kashmir. He has stories in the rest of India. In fact, India is the only country of the world where much before the hackers showed up, Muladeva actually wrote a text for robbers. What a society! The greatest robber, Muladeva, kind of like a Robin Hood, actually decides, okay, I'm going to write it all down, man. And he wrote a text so that all robbers can actually study and become good robbers, right? So where else in the world did you find it? So with that as an introduction to this, Sarga 6, a framing comment. Let's wade in. Who wants to go first? What struck you? Let's just go on.
Who wants to go? I can go.
Yeah, go on.
Um, so as usual, I'm thinking Mahabharata and Shakuni.
Mm-hmm.
So it reminded me of that scene from Mahabharata, and it also reminded me of Sadhguru, because at some point they, you, like the author mentions that, what is the motivation for Muladhara to gamble? Like, is it the addiction? Um, I would say yes, maybe for the king it is. But for him, it is kind of a rush which makes him feel alive, I guess. And it reminded me somewhere about Sadhguru, because he does things that, make him risk his life, which makes him feel alive. So a lot of things actually here just reminded me of like different things. But yeah, I mean, it's basically building the story. Otherwise, I I'll let everybody else speak, and if I think of more things, I will add in.
Yeah, good. Okay, next. Who wants to?
So I can go next. So
by the way, that was very good. Amrita, that was very good for a couple of reasons. One, you were able to connect this particular scene with that very famous scene in Mahabharata. So that's one very good thing. Very, very amazing. The second great thing was that you actually understood right away this whole idea that nowhere in civil life, do you have the fear of death as you do when you go and gamble with the high stakes that there were in ancient times. Right? This is the ultimate high stake fear of death situation for a civil, right? But you can also now understand why to gamble was baked into the code of the warriors. The king didn't have a choice. He was a Kshatriya. He didn't have a choice. This was part of the code of warriors, that you have to know how to gamble, because it's in that throw of the dice that the fear of death gets simulated. So you picked up on that. Kudos to you. Okay, let's go next.
I just I read this paragraph, and it seems it's profound when you said that while speaking, one offers the gift of breath to the energy of speech. While silent, one offers the gift of speech to the energy of breath. In this kingdom, life breath is held supreme and thus not to be wasted. So I think it can be a chapter in itself, like, talking about this life breath. That just struck me most.
Yeah, that is an ocean there, and it has a lot of implications for the world of artificial intelligence. And Why do you think in that world, besides what you just said, at a practical level, why do you think the robots were silent? Besides what was said.
I mean, not to be wasted, I guess.
Yes, for
Because
human
ultimately linked to the breath.
For human beings, that's the right answer, right?
Yes.
That's absolutely right. And that was shared. But why in this kingdom were the robots not given the power to speak? See, right now there's a lot of conversation going on how dangerous AI is and ethical AI and what guardrails you put on robots, right? That's all over the press. I didn't make this up. I didn't make this up. This is what I just wrote is true. It's from an ancient story. So I didn't make this stuff up. This robot kingdom story exists. And in this robot kingdom, they mandated that robots be silent. And the reason I speculated this is my speculation, that they associated Bach with life energy. And they would not allow Bach to be associated with robots. That's my speculation.
Now, another thing you mentioned here was that in the last paragraph, that if the God of love found true love, then the suffering from his addiction would disappear.
Yeah.
So that's there. So if we take it out of the book, and if we try to imply to our lives, so is there something deep hidden when people are addicted to certain things? I mean, not saying that is bad or good, but let's say that the person has an addiction to alcohol or has an addiction to any drug. So there has to be something that's missing. As a result, they tend to go into this to cover up their missing part or whatever they are missing. So I'm just thinking, like, if we keep that in mind, I mean, how we can, impact the society keeping this sentence in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was clear. It's clear, Vinita, that you were very struck by two very, very deep aspects of the end of this chapter, and it's also interesting that it was Dawn who sort of made that observation, right? All the others, Hafiz asks a different question. He's intrigued by the mechanical technology of this, and other people ask other questions. But Dawn has a very interesting observation. She basically is trying to understand Muladeva at the level of his inner emotionality.
Yeah. Very
Good
deep.
for you. Good for you. Good for you. And she associates a happy ending with finding love, right?
Yeah.
What does that tell you? What does that tell you about Dawn?
And the other thing that I wanted to ask, so this Deva Panchala Mountains, it's for real? Where is it in Kashmir? I never heard about it.
Pir Panchal Mountains, right?
It's what these SOBs called Pir Panchala.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What was that?
Sorry, I should say that you're taping me. Okay. It's in modern times, it's known as Pir Panchal Mountains.
Okay.
The original name is Deva Panchala. Stein has written a whole article on that. But that's the original name.
Okay.
They renamed it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. No, very deep. Okay. Next. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Yeah.
Okay. I just noticed that, observed that Yuva was wearing graphite colored pants because you've not described his attire before. But only in this chapter. So I was wondering why, like graphite, and then he's also Dawn is able to see that he's in a happy mood. And then somewhere in the middle, Yuva says gray is his favorite color. And then association of gray with the good and the bad. So trying to think, and then you have Muladev's character, which is the prominent protagonist in this, and who's not good. I mean, he's gambling and addiction, and you see
Okay,
that.
stay with the first part. Stay with the first part. I will come back.
Okay, so I'm connecting the gray with the good and the bad and the Muladev's character. That is, you are trying to say that there's good and bad, bad and good, and it's just a matter of perspective because he's the Robin Hood and a rabble rouser, but yet, like, who writes a book on how to deceive people and become thieves, right? So, just trying to get, is that one of the lessons, or is that something that we are trying to say here? And then you were talking about an incident where his parents are paying or are gambling, and the mother kind of takes whatever gets wager, takes away all of those things, but the story is left incomplete. I googled it. There was a lot of stuff on Diwali and Mairi Gamble and Diwali and Shiva Parvati gambling sessions. The reference to Peer Panjar, and the rules of the game are that the stakes have to be such that both are equals. For different people from different aspects of society, and yet when it comes to addiction, they are the same. Like one has a weakness of Kali, he leverages on that weakness and say, if Kali will be happy if you serve my head, and they're just playing on it, and Muldev wants the thrills, right? So it just says how in daily conversations or daily life transactions, you're leveraging on what the other person wants. I mean, I'm referring to my work conversations. You always say, okay, think what that person wants, and we are giving what we want. One point was where Yuva refers that if you offer something that is their weakness, and then Dawn tries to question more, but there is no answer that is left. So what is it that you can offer to Arman? And that becomes his weakness. Somewhere it lets unanswered, but I'm wondering if it's Dawn itself, because
you 100% right.
Okay.
200% right. You
Okay.
never want to answer that question. Dawn has to arrive at that realization.
Yeah, because you didn't answer it in the Sarga. So I'm wondering maybe it's not that. Okay. Because he said,
answer it in the story because it's a journey that Dawn has to travel. He has to answer it and realize, oh no, it's me he was.
Yeah, because she asked like, what's that weakness, and it just it's an incomplete conversation that doesn't happen, and I think you was also trying to ignore or just move on to the next place.
RPG, you were the perfect proof of what Subhati talked about a couple of weeks ago, that the most powerful contribution of Kashmir to literary theory is the idea of dhwani, right? Dhwani. So here, I didn't write down the answer, but there was implication, and you grabbed it. You grabbed it. So this is an example of that. You grabbed it.
And what you spoke of, what about fears, right? Muldev must have phenomenal concentration to block all fears when he's trying to wiggle into the pipe with lard covered. And he's blocking out everything else except the opening in the pipe at the end.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of those because when you yourself are in some turmoil and emotion, there's always a fear attached to it. For myself at least, I'm saying this. I don't identify it immediately, but there is an underlying fear. So maybe these are outlaws, right? So outlaws compared to Muladev as well, there is a slight connection there. So is it that each one or whatever fear that they have, they are expected to block that out and only focus on the outcome? I'm wondering if that's something which will play out when they come face to face with either Dushita or Arman.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, but you see Teg there doubles down on it. And he says, you don't just block the fear of death. He says you block death. And you stay on course. My beheaded ancestor held his head in his hand and continued fighting to victory. This is beyond them. Dharma beyond them. This is Teg saying this. Right?
Yeah.
So there are lots of profound Nipi lessons here, and whether you like it or not, Dawn is absorbing it and changing it herself and growing in the arc of her journey as a heroine. But whether you like it or not, you are changing too. You're absorbing all this, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back to the first question. That, gray is Yuva's favorite color. And so, and it puts him in a good mood. Well, why is it his favorite color? There can be many explanations. One, elephants are
Elephants, yeah.
That's number one reason. It's his color, it's his natural color, right? Oh, number two, his father is gray. It's all vibhuti ash, right? So, gray also is father's color. But there's a third reason. Remember, you are in a digital world. In a digital world, in a dual world, there's black and white. But Yuva is not digital. Neither is Dawn, neither are the five people. They're analogs. And you heard of that famous book, Shades of Grey. The color gray is a color of great possibilities. And when you're going to go gambling, where there are infinite possibilities at the throw of the dice, what color are you going to wear to a gambling den? Gray. Gray is the color of great possibilities. So he's the happy mood. It's a natural color. It's his father's color. And it's a color for the occasion. And it's a color of infinite possibilities. Oh, he's the seventh heaven. And he's got to stop that off. So, so these are all very great points, RTP. Very, very great points. Let's roll. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Mm-hmm.
So I also thought there was a lot of similarity with Mahabharata and Yudhishthira and Shakuni and the dice game. And where the thumb cutting happens, I thought of Eklavya somehow. I don't know why that story came to mind, because he had to give his thumb up too, and he was a warrior. And when your thumb is gone, then what are you going to fight with? So, and at one place you say, I have to keep an eye on Chandragupta. So then I'm thinking, I mean, Chandragupta's tutor was Chanakya. So is he partly playing the role of a Chanakya kind of a guy, like who has all these plans? And because it was Chanakya who made Chandragupta win the war ultimately.
So it made me think that that's what he's going to do and help Dawn basically the same way Chanakya helped Chandragupta.
Right.
Yep.
All kinds of angles here, man. All kinds of angles.
And the rest, I was agreeing with Aarti ji also, so I won't repeat it again. But yes, that Chandragupta part was very striking to me in this chapter.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's continue.
Yeah. Yeah. So good morning, good evening, greetings. So I two of the things that I had marked as my questions were definitely the color gray that Aarti ji spoke about, and then of course the missing thumbs that Vinita ji spoke about. For me to put the chapter in brief, it was a very layered and very interesting chapter because Moola Deva was a new introduction, was a new character. So the first thing that came to my mind, maybe I missed it, I'm not sure, maybe in the previous chapters, was it done? Is a reference there anywhere earlier?
No.
So I was really curious because he's there and we are completely doing the character, understanding him, and so I was curious to know the layers of this character. And there's one thing that you had mentioned was the Ursari tribe. I didn't know about that tribe, and I googled and I understood that they are they're lovers, and I got the context of the complete thing there. Now there was this line that Yuva said that is what my father said when my mother invited him to play a hand with her. Then she took everything away from him, leaving him wearing ... Well, that's for another day. So this is sort of keeping me curious. What is this story between it? I'm assuming it's between Shiva and Parvati.
Yeah, you can Google that. You can Google that.
Okay. Okay. And the other thing that also took away a lot of my curiousness, attention, was this word here called Ghata Yantras. These are the Ghati Yantras that were invited in water. So is this the Persian wheel that you're talking about? Was it like an invention in Kashmir, from Kashmir?
Yes. They, once again, appropriation that they call it Persian wheel. It should be called the Kashmir wheel. Our ancestors invested in. The very famous, the greatest first curator of Indian art, Ananda Kumaraswamy, has written a whole treatise on it. The wheel that they call the Persian wheel, the water wheel, has come from Kashmir. Your ancestors, my ancestors invented it.
Okay. So this was Ananda
Kumaraswamy. He was, I think, the first curator of Indian art in America.
Okay.
He was appointed in Boston, and he's considered to be a legendary curator. Everybody else who followed him looks upon him as the guru, and you can read about him. And he wrote a monograph on this issue.
Okay. And when you were describing the ant thing, the bet between Mooladeva and the king, so he's putting ants in the pajamas. So this took me to this story that I had done, the folk tales book that I had done, in which I did a story where it wasn't Moola. I didn't have a grand character, but I had put up a story of the character was a thief, and I'm told that there was a very popular thief in Kashmir, and he would do such silly things. So I had that. I just thought I'll show that to you. This is the chapter that I did. Ants in my pants.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that was it just took me to that. But of course, there was so much depth in this story. There's one line that I want to read and understand a little more from you. While speaking, one offers the gift of breath to the energy of speech. While silent, one offers the gift of speech to the energy of breath. In this kingdom, life breath is held supreme and thus not to be wasted. So is it in a way we are talking about the thoughts or the energy that we as souls carry? What do we mean?
Look, you can read up the whole thing. People do moan breath, right? They do moan breath. And this is basically moan breath, right? This is basically saying, I'm not going to speak. And when I don't speak, then it seems to start a certain internal re-engineering process, right? And you can read all that theory and science behind the moan breath. We had a very famous, what was his name? He would never speak. It's like, yeah, man. One of our saints, well-known saints in Kashmir, he would never speak. But there's a whole feedback.
Jad Bharat?
Could be,
Maybe.
but it could be, yeah.
There are many.
But there's a whole feedback mechanism that you create by not speaking. Whole feedback mechanism that you create. And that's why they would go to caves, just be silent, no sound, that's what caves are good for. There's absolutely no sound. You're in a solitary chamber and you can meditate. Maybe hear the inner sound. If the external sound is completely suppressed, maybe it fine-tunes your body and you can hear internal sounds. But this is all, you can read all that stuff. That then gets beyond the range of a storyteller.
Yeah. That's that. Thank you.
Okay. A small point here. I just put in your book. I said write a review of Rakesh Kaul's Dawn on ChatGPT. And what comes out is truly magnificent. If you haven't seen it, you might want to try it. Very excellent. Beautiful. It says Rakesh Kaul's Dawn is a tour de force that deserves a place among the finest works of historical fiction. Lyrical prose, well-rounded characters, richly textured backdrop, etc., etc., etc. You might want to look it up. Very nice. Just go to ChatGPT if you don't have an account, and you can always go there. I use ChatGPT sometimes to help with my writing.
I do too. It's very helpful.
I use it for my work as well, for coding.
But very nice.
But ChatGPT will give you different results every time based on what config you have it at.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I see. I didn't know that. Because it's updating its database, right?
Not updating.
And interactions with people.
No, there is a parameter there which randomizes it. Like the parameters are set in a way, and you can actually tune it to make it more random, more like this or that. So it will give you different results based on But yeah, we'll all get good. We'll all get different results, but they'll all be good. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I tried once asking ChatGPT to write a koan, Kashmiri koan, of Kashmiri philosophy in a koan form. And did a really pretty beautiful job with it, So, and asked it also to write a poem on Kashmiri Shaivism, and it did a very wonderful job, actually. Hard to see, hard to imagine somebody coming up with something like that. Yeah.
But all that brings up this question of the difference between a machine and a human. Perhaps in our behavior, we are not all that different. What we do in our lives could, in retrospect, been seen as the behavior of a machine. It's only that when we are living our lives, we think we are independent and we are doing this or that, but somebody else looking at our life could say that, hey, this is quite humdrum, this has to be expected or whatever. But of course, Rakesh does cover all that in his book.
Yeah. Hafiz talks about it in this chapter. Algorithms are built on information, but Muladeva is the ocean of wildcards.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. That was the thing that actually struck me in this, that algorithms are built on information inside history itself, but Muladeva throws wildcards, and now there's no predicting the future. Are algorithms trustworthy when faced with a surprise? This seems to hint that this could be something that Dawn is going to do in the, that she throw up a wild card.
She sure will.
So I'm waiting eagerly to read that. I was holding myself back from going ahead, and seeing what happens, but.
So remember, an AI machine knows everything that's knowable.
Right.
So whatever Dawn has to throw has to come from the unknown. Right?
Yeah.
That's how she'll beat the machine. That's what all the utility lessons are leading up to. That's all the utility lessons are leading up to. Okay, let's continue.
And like Avanti, I was also intrigued by that story of Shiva and Parvati having their, doing a game, playing a game of dice. And so I Googled it up and found it very interesting. The whole story, like Narad Muni comes to them. As usual, Narad Muni is famous for creating all kinds of trouble everywhere, right? So he comes and tells, them, incites them to play a game of dice. And Parvati, basically, in the first few rounds, she loses things, she allows herself to lose. And Shivji thinking, he's supreme, how can he ever lose, right? But he ends up losing his Trishul and his Ganga, that mat of hair and other stuff that he had wagered. And then he ends up, after that, going off into the jungle. And, because he's lost everything, he goes off and decides to become a sadhu again, go back into meditation. And, Parvati initially feels very excited, thrilled that she has won. But after a few, after a bit of time, she starts realizing she misses Shiva quite a bit. So she decides to come as an apsara to kind of disturb Shivji. And so she comes out as a beautiful apsara, and there's bees that are attracted to her. So the bees make these buzzing sounds, which basically wakes up Shivji. And then when Shivji sees her, he asks, "What are you doing here?" She says, "I'm looking for a husband, And he says, "Oh, okay, I'd like you. I can be your husband, And she says back, "But I've heard that you're already married to some beautiful woman, and so you shouldn't be making these type of things, You should come if you want to do that. You should come next to Mahadev mountain and propose to me there," or something like that, So anyway, and then Narad Muni comes back again at that time, and he tells Shivji that, all this kind of problems arise when you start, getting infatuated with women and something. So he goes back again to the jungles and decides to go back into meditation for a long time. And then Parvati gets really upset, because, she's really missing him a lot. So finally, Narad Muni convinces her that she should plead with Shivji and say that, that I can't live without you. And so there's a whole story behind this whole thing. But to me, it sounded like, again, this whole idea of Shivji with, pure consciousness that is there. If we were just pure consciousness and didn't have the central part of it, which is what is there, which Parvati represents, then it would be it could be that such a thing would always exist and, could exist on its own, but all the fun would be lost. And that's the part that Parvati brings into the whole equation, as I see it. That's the whole thing that Shakti brings in.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got lost into this side track because you have all these beautiful small little things that get you into this, side roads, which are interesting stories. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's come back to that last point about defeating the known. When your adversary has complete knowledge, how do you defeat that adversary? And we have an example of that. How do you think Muladeva defeated the king with his strategy?
he did something which nobody could have predicted. Right?
Yeah,
nobody would have thought of.
But what was that weakness?
Oh, his addiction. His addiction to gambling.
How did he get in? How did he get in? He got in through the drain pipe, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, people are not fools. In the known universe, people knew that somebody can come through a drain pipe, right? So they obviously put a drain pipe that was narrow, that they felt nobody can come through, right? I mean, that's all knowledge that's known. What was the element that Muladev introduced out of the unknown? What did he do?
The fact that he was willing to, not be scared about losing his life and going through such a narrow drain.
No, he did something that would have been unthinkable of any calculation.
He put lard on his body.
He put lard on his body. That would be unthinkable for any Kashmiri Pandit to do. Unthinkable. Nobody would calculate that a Kashmiri Pandit in those times, they were all Pandits, that he would cover his body with lard. So he did a little bit out of the box. Who else hasn't spoken yet?
Meera,
I think everybody.
Meera hasn't, but I guess...
Avanti, you still want to continue. Go ahead.
No, this just adding on to the lard thing that we just spoke about. So does that mean why you've written here that Mula Deva, who bet his head, the ability to save face, even in the face of an extreme threat, by his willingness to sacrifice himself, seems to be his secret? Does that connect with his, the daringness?
Yeah, it's all, I mean, he's the Houdini of his times, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's willing to take on these, put me in the river, tie handcuffs around me, put me in a box, and in 30 seconds you have to come out or you'll drown in the water because you can't hold your breath beyond that. And yet the man manages to come, right? So Mula Deva is sort of like the Houdini, right? He's constantly, yeah.
Thanks.
Meera, kahan pe ho aap?
Meera ji is sleeping, I think. Okay.
Okay, Meera ji ko sone do. So one last thing I will comment on is, you may have noticed this fascinating, and this is actually true, this fascinating prayer, gambling prayer to Kaul, which I have translated. Mm-hmm. Fascinating prayer. And I mean, the man is invoking Kali, and so what does it show? That Mula Deva even defeated Kali? Mm-hmm. Right? He won over the king. Mm-hmm. Now, how is that possible? How is that possible?
He himself is God.
No. There's a little hint given here. The little hint given here is that the king, for his winning hand, he rolled the dice with his left hand.
Left hand. The second time when there's a go ahead.
The Rama way. He uses the left hand. The Rama way. Mm. And through that, he wins. The left way. But Mula Deva uses the right way, not the left way. And so he ultimately wins. Look, there is an ocean in this story. Mm-hmm. I want you to savor it, every drop of it, because these are behaviors in our culture, in our society, where everything had meaning. And this was all integrated, and that's what I said to you. that this chapter is a good illustration of why a Kashmiri story is a bowl of spaghetti. A real Kashmiri story is a bowl of spaghetti. There are many strings in it. All these strings, like noodles, are intertwined. And when you eat it, it's very joyful. But a Kashmiri story is a bowl of spaghetti.
So, speaking of that,
yes.
I was.
Yes, my dear, the left way intrigues you. Go ahead.
You know, there was, I don't know if it makes sense, but I was reminded of Ram Bror when there was a cat meow in there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was everybody or was it intentional, and then I realized I don't even know why we say Kuschu Ram Bror during Hirat, and so I have to go back to see why we say that.
Yeah.
But now I'm super confused. I didn't want to say anything, but I would want to ask if anybody knows and why you put it in there, if it was intentional.
Who knows? Why don't we ask Bharati to give, I mean, he's read the book, he's reviewed it, he still remembers this. Any last thoughts you have, Subhashi, about Mula Deva and gambling and risk-taking and...
I don't, but talking about Ramabror, I remember many, many years ago when, as a teenager, we were growing up in Anantnag, and it was Herat, of course, and our father, he had to knock, and so pucha gaya usse na kuchu, and out of the heat of the moment, he said Ramu Hoon. Everybody made so much of fun of it. We just blurted out because Rambro is not the normal combination. So nothing more than that. I'm not as much up to all the symbolism that we have. And there is deep symbolism as this book and other writing that Rakesh has done. Not as much about Kashmir as, I spent a lot of my career, if you will, going back into a much earlier era, looking at the earliest era, the Vedic stuff, etc., on which I've written a lot of stuff, but not as much on Kashmiri cultural practices. And maybe I do need to educate myself further. So although I was a part of all these functions and celebrations and gambling, we used to do all that as well. But one more point I would add, you have in the Mahabharata, you have the gambling that the Kauravas and the Pandavas do, and it's not so well known that gambling was an essential part of the Rajasuya sacrifice. And probably the idea was that the king's position naturally is full of so much of danger that king should have gone through this drama, if you will, in the gambling session of the possibility of losing it all, because the king can lose it all. So it was not just a random thing that the Kauravas and the Pandavas were doing. In fact, the great Dutch Sanskritist J.C. Hesterman, Heesterman, he's written a book on it. So there are reasons and possibly why we did of course, went through not real gambling as kids, right? We used to play with those horror, right? The cowdies. So that was also to train us in some sense about the randomness of fate, so to speak. But I need to learn more. Let me confess. I need to learn more about our own tradition, about Kashmir, seriously.
I think you know a lot. Don't learn anymore. Then we will never be able to catch up. We are still catching up. I was listening to the video, the recording from the last session that I missed. I just, I could not finish it. I have to rewind it like 5 times and go. So please slow down. If you want, you can find out about Ram Bro. I'll be okay
Ram
with
Bro,
that.
that is a very good one. And the other thing that you were talking about, it just came to my mind. You know, the spaghetti, right? Spaghetti, Kashmiri stories, and so on. I recently discovered that the DNA molecule is 2 meters long. 2 meters is almost this much, right? 6 feet, 7 feet, or something. But the molecule has to, through various spirals, find itself compacted into a sphere which is only 6 micrometers in diameter, 5 zeros and 6 meters. And it does it, there are protein molecules, and then it winds itself around it as a spiral, and then the whole thing winds again, and never gets tangled up. If it were to get tangled up, then of course there is disease and death. Never gets tangled up. It's incredible. The whole life machinery is incredible, amazing. It happens naturally.
And just imagine us being replaced by AI after taking so much trouble of winding.
Absolutely. No, of course, my own take on this, and I've mentioned this before, is that AI will never be conscious, so we need not be afraid.
I'm not afraid.
AI will not be able to love. Let's put it this way. Love is something only human beings can do.
And they won't have a soul.
Yeah, so without a soul, you can't love. Right?
I'm not afraid, because then it'll just be another conscious being. If they are conscious, they're in addition to me. I'm okay with it.
Right.
You know, Subhaji, from my side, thank you for telling that story, because it basically once again proves the point that at its very essence, life is Adbhut. It puts you in a state of wonder. And the fact that the mystics and Kashmir, land of mystics, be in a state of wonder, that is so core to life. So that's state life is. It's a 7-foot strand that somehow I just
6 micrometer diameter sphere. And based on which particular protein molecule, you have different chromosomes. That's where it all comes from. But another interesting thing, since we're talking about centrality of Kashmir, is that recently there was a paper published on languages. You know, there have been all these theories that maybe the origin of all the Indo-European languages, where 100 years ago they said Europe, then they said Russia. Now the latest paper by Western people, you know, who don't want to look for its origin in India, is very close to Kashmir. The latest thing is highlands of Iran. And there are those who are saying really, now these are not linguists, who are saying that it might be Kashmir. Who knows? We'll find out. But these are only theories. You can neither prove them nor disprove them. These are only theories. So these are stories, you know, the stories of the kind that Rakesh was talking about. What is a persuasive story? You conquer people through stories. Now, the West, since the West cannot compete with China in manufacturing, so they are still dominating in terms of stories, climate, this or that, or gender. So through that, they are going to bend the will of everybody else, and they will have to fall in too. So stories ultimately are the most powerful.
Wonderful. Well, as usual, I think we should be very blessed, feel very blessed that, of course, Subhash ji is here, Rakesh ji is here, Avanti is also an author. I feel like, I'm pretty sure many of us, like all of you, kind of write in some or the other way. I just feel grateful that we are able to continue like this, and hopefully we will keep going like this, and it's only going to get better, as I see it. So thanks. If anybody else wants to say anything.
Just one quick question. If Rakesh ji can give a link to this Vatul Nath, you were talking about that in the beginning. I'd be really interested in.
Yeah, it is. The Vatul Nath sutras are on the Internet Archive.
Okay.
But I saw some translations in French. I haven't seen a translation in English. The Sanskrit original, yeah.
I'll send you the English one that Bettina has done. And the other person, as I said, there are two people that to me, they're my guys. Vatulanath is one. The other you will meet later also in this book, and that's Hasavantha. So we'll say that. Those are my two favorite guys. And now, when you reach Sarga 7, you will, after reading Sarga 7, you will essentially have reached the halfway point of the story. It will be exactly, you will have completed half of Dawn's Niti journey. I will once again say to you, I hope that as you read these chapters, that you're keeping a logbook of what your personal Niti takeaways are. So please keep that logbook so that at the end, we can just go through what each one of you got out of this Niti Yatra. Okay?
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have not watched Rakesh ji's interview and in live image, I think that was amazing. I think most of us watched it.
Yeah,
Good.
Thanks for that.
Thank
It was
you.
enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Okay, good night.
Bye.
Good night,
Namaskar.
everyone.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Yeah.
Good night.